15 Ultra has the whole photography kit. Now I feel we can get started. Hey there, this episode of Some Gadget Guy is brought to you by viewers like you. All of the amazing people sharing content on social media and the generosity of my patrons at patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. More info on those awesome nerds later in the video. I am only days into using the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, but I'm almost 2 years into using the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, and now that the photography kit is in-house, there are a few things I really wanted to focus just as an evolutionary upgrade to the accessories that our ultra-priced phones get to benefit from. Throwing this out there as a talking point, something we can dig into down in the comments, why don't more phone manufacturers make better first-party photography accessories? I'm gonna let you mull that over and hopefully we see some good chatter down in the comments, but I do want to revisit the 13 Ultra because I made a video a while back. As much as I love the functionality that these accessories bring, I was very disappointed in the construction quality and I had a few suggestions on how to improve this. This photography kit was a big deal. We'd already gone through 2 generations of Xiaomi Ultra phones that brought significant improvements to photography capabilities. Then you'd go shopping for stuff and you couldn't find a lot to really support content creation on your phone. So Xiaomi did it themselves. And the first generation wasn't great. The grip solution here is handy, but it's at kind of an angle and at a depth where it didn't really help me hold on to the phone any better. We have all touchscreen, so I need something to brace against so that my fingers can grip this. That pretty much just means I've got to touch the screen somewhere or I'm going two-handed regardless. It snapped on in a really satisfying way. This is very secure. This is really snug. I trusted the phone wouldn't just come flying out of the grip, but it was also only a Bluetooth device. There was no pass-through. There was no connector. So you would have to charge this separate from charging this, which meant you have to keep taking them apart. And that wasn't great, especially because the construction on this case, the edges, all 4 edges on this case cracked a couple months into me using this phone. I was able to salvage the actual Xiaomi case. I didn't move on to a third-party case, and I super glued all these points, but eventually one of them just failed spectacularly, totally ripped off, totally gouged out. Not great considering how expensive this whole package was. Reason I stuck with it though is for this bayonet system. Running around the camera module on the back of the phone, you slot this in, and the case was designed, you could use this as like an accent to make it look prettier or to add functionality. For me, what was most important was getting that 67mm filter ring. Add filters to the back of this camera. But also, this was installed the wrong way. It turns in the same direction as filters you might screw onto the back of the phone. There's a little FLD filter, and when you screw it on, it goes in the direction that you would use to tighten it on that bayonet mount. But if you tighten that filter and then you try to take it off quickly, you're turning in the same direction that takes the whole plate off. One time I had to get pliers to hold one piece in place, and then I had a microfiber cloth just to give my fingers a little extra traction, and it took a while to free the filter from this mount. But you stick with it because having these kinds of accessories helps contribute to your content creation ideas. I never did get to spend much time with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, but I was really happy to see that Xiaomi took a lot of these suggestions that creators were talking about and improved the quality of the Xiaomi 14 Ultra photography kit. The camera grip got a little USB-C plug so you could charge through the grip and also charge the phone. And the filter mount was improved by getting a little locking mechanism. Now I think they could have fixed this maybe even cheaper just by reversing the orientation of the mount so that when you're attaching a filter, it's going in the direction that would release the mount, and then when you remove the filter, it goes into the locking direction for the mount. But I'll take what I can get. Anything that secures the mount is gonna be just fine. It makes filters so much easier to put on and take off. That was a fun little trip down memory lane. That catches us up to the improvements now for the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, bringing a lot of the same functionality from the 14 Ultra. USB-C power pass-through, so when you plug in the grip and the phone get to charge. Little locking button here for your filter mount. And same thing, if you just want the aesthetics of it, you have 2 options in each photography kit. You can go with red and black or just a plain black rim. I'm not that interested in the aesthetics. I'm a function over form kind of guy, and what I care about most is getting this 67mm filter. I can put on neutral density filters, I can put on circular polarizers. Unfortunately, because of the camera arrangement on the 15 Ultra, where we have a circle, but most of our camera sensors are aligned out to the edges of this filter thread, we can't use some of the sillier accessories like diopters. Like you want like a magnification lens. The worst place to put the camera sensor is out on the edges of this rim where you're basically just getting fringing and vignetting. It looks real bad and the phone has a miserable time trying to focus on that. If one of these sensors was in the middle, then something like this might make sense. These kinds of filter accessories usually aren't great. They are going to degrade the image quality on most standalone cameras, but they can kind of be fun to use in one of those I want more of a degraded or worn out look to a photo. This will never be as good as a proper macro lens or even a set of extension tubes, but I digress. Getting back to the filter on a phone, a lot of people think this kind of stuff is silly, but you can put on like a UV filter, something that's not really going to change the optical quality of your photos, but might just help protect this large circular slab of glass that sticks out from the back of the phone. People make fun of me, but even just a cheap lens cap, that can help keep dirt and debris off of the sensitive bits. You pop it off when you want to take photos and you're good to go. And people look at this like this is some kind of outlandish presentation of a phone. Who could even carry this? It must not fit in any kind of pocket. When we're ignoring things like, we used to carry standalone cameras, these point and shoot lens bulging cameras, in addition to something like a cell phone. And even adding all of these accessories, this is still slimmer in depth than what this would have been in a back pocket. So I get it, if you're not really an overly photography focused individual and you're in a pair of skinny jeans, then this is gonna be a no-go. But even without all the accessories, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra probably would not have fit in your skinny jeans anyway. This is totally carryable in my Levi's. I really like the other control additions from the Xiaomi 14 Ultra photography kit, a dedicated video button, and then a little rocker that we can assign to different tasks, but I think it's spot on as something to quickly help us adjust exposure. Even when we're just kind of shooting full auto, it is nice to bump up the brightness, drop the brightness, and sliding on that little focus indicator is not very precise. Want a third stop? You just roll this little rocker, darkens the photo, and you're good to go. That is super handy. But we want to see those yearly evolutions. And one of the things I really like about this accessory, if you want it, there's a little metal arm. It's on a little screw-in bracket, runs from the grip to the front of the phone, and it gives your thumb a place to hold onto the camera grip that does not touch the screen. My big issue with the 13 Ultra camera kit, there was no way to brace against the grip so that you could hold this better, and that's been fixed now. Other little customization options, like you can put in a different shutter button if you want an all black button. I do like the little red trim on this, and the battery inside got a little bit of a nudge. It's now a 2000 milliamp hour battery, and I like that we can set the charge at a specific battery capacity on the phone. Really taking this video back here, one of my biggest pet peeves with the camera grip for the Lumia 1020 was you would plug it in, and yes, there was a little battery that would top off the phone, but the second you plugged it in, it would just charge. There was no on-off switch. You couldn't control when the phone would get charged. So say you left the house and your phone was fully charged and you plugged it in, you'd constantly have this trickle charge just at the peak of the battery capacity for the 1020. I never really held on to the Lumia 1020 camera grip because I didn't think it was very useful. On the 15 Ultra, I've told the phone to only tap this battery when the phone battery gets down to around 30%, and it gives me a little extra runtime out in the field. This is a significant upgrade to what I was using on the 13 Ultra. It's a nice little iterative improvement over the 14 Ultra, and it's a clear communication from the manufacturer that they're not only standing behind their product, iterating on this Ultra line of camera specialist devices, but they're not waiting for someone else to make another accessory. They're going direct, they're setting expectations really high, and I think the phone lives up to a lot of those expectations. Looking back at the 13 and 14 Ultras, looking forward to the 15 Ultras, one of the only concerns I have with this general presentation is, will we see the same flexibility in other accessories that might be able to tap this system? While I'm holding up the 13 Ultra, you might have noticed I'm not using the Xiaomi 67mm thread anymore, and I've got a metal plate here that has individual holes for each of the camera sensors, because 3 of these holes have 17mm filter threads that we can attach other lenses directly. Throw something like this macro lens onto the main camera sensor, stop that sensor down to f4, and you can get some stunning close-up macro photography that no one ever would have expected that shots like that could come from a phone. And it's this plate that makes all the difference. A lot of these lenses can be purchased with these additional like clip-on squeezy things, and that doesn't really keep the lens add-on aligned with the actual camera sensor. They're really easy to slide around, and sometimes they'll block stuff on the phone screen. If you can't mount it to a plate machined for that phone directly in front of that camera sensor, you gotta go pretty big to find another kind of solution. When we step up to cages and rigs like this, if they're not purpose-built for the phone, then they have to be crazy adjustable, and our big camera sensor phones often suffer in a setup like this. Here I'm demonstrating with my Vivo X100 Pro, which also has a pretty sizable camera bulge on the back, which is not as big as the camera bulge on the 15 Ultra. And the grip on my Beast Cage is universal. It's just kind of a spring clamp mount that you put the phone in, but to secure the phone, and the best grip on this mount, you can see it comes in at a diagonal. Any lens that you put on a setup like this is going to be at a slight angle to the camera sensor when you're holding this phone as securely as you can. So the solution is you've got to shimmy the phone till it's at the very edges of the cage, and then you have to be really careful not to touch or wiggle the phone, lest it pops out of the cage or scooches back in and then it's misaligned with that camera sensor again. See, this is the kind of pain that like iPhone and Samsung owners don't know. If you want, you can buy into a system like Moment lenses, and if Moment knows that that phone manufacturer is going to sell a couple million units, they'll build a case that fits that phone perfectly, fits their lenses perfectly, and everything's gravy. We started getting a bit more interest on Xiaomi, also delivering killer camera phones and developing their own bayonet mount, so an accessories manufacturer didn't have to start from scratch making something for these devices. The macro lens and the plate that I'm using on my 13 Ultra come from a company called Photor Gear, and I've already put in a message with them to see if they'll also be doing similar accessories for the 15 Ultra. But the camera layout on the 15 Ultra, 3 lenses on the bottom so close together, and an even bigger sensor on the telephoto camera is going to make some of these accessories really difficult to include on this kind of housing. I'm anxious that we're not going to have the same kind of flexibility. And also because the 15 Ultra doesn't have a variable aperture, I already know that I probably can't do much with something like a macro lens attachment, because the depth of field will be so shallow, I won't be able to get a good focused image out of this wide aperture on the 23mm equivalent lens. But at the very least, what we can count on, we can get some filters on the back of this phone, we can put a lens cap to protect these sensors, we can make this feel like a proper camera when we want that kind of functionality, and then we can pop it all off and just use it like a phone when we just want it to be a phone. But I finally have the whole kit in-house, and I feel I can really get started. This is the claim that Xiaomi is making about photography capabilities. I'm only a couple days into using the phone, and I already feel like this is going to be one of, if not the best overall camera package on any phone released in 2025. We have a whole lot to jump into. We have a whole lot to talk about, and the folks who are going to get to see the results of my commentary, critique, and analysis first are, of course, my incredible patrons. All of the folks over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list of names, scrolling by on your screen right now, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart. As this list of names, these are the people helping to keep the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. None of my reviews or editorials or comparisons would be possible without their generosity. And we've been having a lot of conversations both on the Patreon and on the private Discord about to handle reviewing a phone when I'm coming to this more than a month later than all of the other channels that have already kind of slowed down and are not talking about this phone as much. I'm sure now that this has gotten some updates and the performance has improved, maybe the real tech enthusiasts out there are curious what you can really do with it and how it might stack up to the competition. I don't know. We'll be starting that discussion now on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet at SomeGadgetGuy, basically everywhere, but these days, trying to spend a bit more time on the Mastodons, a lot less so on a little on the blue skis, a lot less so on the threads and the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and none at all on that dumpster fire site, and I will catch you all on the next video.